In the 2000s and the early 2010s, there was this surge of atheism. And on the internet, they would be so obnoxious and so intransigent, so know-it-all and insufferable. They spawned so many Reddit Fedora memes that even though I shared the core non-belief, I would go out of my way, thenceforth, to call myself, instead of an atheist, I would just say, oh, I don't believe, or I am non-theist, strictly when asked, when the topic came up. Because I didn't want to get myself associated with that entire group. I didn't want that stigma to stain the whatever relationship I was being concerned about. They created such a toxic identity of insufferable, upsetting nonsense. You're not even worth killing. Insufferable people that I just did not want any association with them. I didn't want that stigma on me. It's their stink can still be smelled whenever the topic even comes up. I would go as far as calling my wife a devout Christian. Her faith, I would go as far as saying it's unshakable. And she grew up going to church, but she doesn't go to church anymore because she had so many bad experiences with church-going people. What the? So many bad experiences with church-going people that even though intellectually she understands that there are plenty of extremely decent, great, kind and understanding and all that stuff, people that go to church, these holier than thou, awful human beings that judge her for everything when she was going to church, they stained in perpetuity the entire institution, and she wants nothing to do with organized religion. Her faith is a personal thing. She will practice it in her own privacy and with the occasional podcast, and that's about it. Because the group created such an insufferable, horrendous stigma that she wants no association with that particular group. Even though intellectually she's well aware that there may be plenty of great, extremely reasonable and pleasant people in it. This is what the American Democrats and the political left in general has been doing for the last decade, culminating in these repulsive ghouls posting videos that they recorded on themselves celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. I am talking about that because, among several other things, it's something that I've been thinking about for the last week. Is one of the reasons why you haven't seen any videos on the channel. Not the only reason. I've been struggling not quite with that aspect of it, but with the implications, the nature of the people, and what you can do about it. These fellers, trying to figure out how to go about this pit of despair over there, much like the pit of despair that these people have sunk themselves in. This is an awful situation and I hate it. Let's see if we can get back up. This is awful. these unhinged ghouls who don't even seem to realize or I don't think they even care about the permanent damage they are creating for the brand. Because let me tell you, you see those peoples, myself included, and I want nothing, absolutely nothing to do with that whole thing. I don't want to be remotely associated with the spirit that makes a usually young woman to go onto the internet, do a dance, while the man wasn't even cold. It used to be. Because you may be thinking right now, oh, holy crap, Blargo, ew. I didn't realize you were a conservatard. It used to be that I felt this way. I don't know if I would call myself a Democrat, but I sure as hell I'm not a Republican. These days, I'm like, I don't think I'm a Republican. I don't think I could ever give myself that label. But holy shit, I sure as hell am not a Democrat or whatever the hell these demons are. And I mean demon in the non-metaphysical sense. I'm on record saying I'm a centrist as they come. I am a dirty fence sitter that will take a little bit of column A, column B, and that will be my solution 9 times out of 10. I will joke about extreme solutions pretty often, but if you ask me to give a sincere answer to how to solve a problem, I'm going to come up with some infuriating compromise, because real life is not a TV show. Civilization requires half measures instead of tribal absolutism. This is not Breaking Bad, where half measures will get you killed. Most of the time, civilization is the managing of acceptable incompetence. So you kind of have to, work that balance of you need something that toes the line between every side. And problems are so stupidly complex in the modern world that no one extreme solution will do. So I am just a dude working out whatever works solutions, and do not attach myself to any one party. That's where I stand when I say these things. And you see these absolute lunatics, these wacko psychos, of which you will probably see a comment or two in my very own comment section. Just now, you may be completely writing me off as I speak. This fellow that you may have been listening to for 6 years and laughing along, he dared have the position that, hey, maybe don't celebrate the death of the dude that is on record many, many times. It takes literally 5 seconds to find a clip of this. Of finding a clip of the man explicitly saying, when you stop talking, you start fighting. And that's the guy that got assassinated. Those replies that you may have been posting on Blue Sky saying, well, he was a fascist and advocated for the death of all trans people. One, he definitely did not advocate for the death, but because he's on record saying that violence is exactly what he was trying to prevent. But the obvious conclusion of that comment being, therefore he needed to die. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that these are the Hollow Faithless. You may have heard me talk about that before, about the Hollow Faithless. These are the people who have being failed by the system. So that has been my struggle, and a struggle that I continue to puzzle at. Is it their fault? These lost souls, are they truly beyond redemption? Because that is what they have revealed themselves to be. Unhinged ghouls that would literally celebrate, especially after I am being explicit about my views right now. They will literally celebrate if I got killed. Especially my wife, the Christian, got killed. And they see the man die, and these are people who would have gleefully pulled the trigger if they could get away with it. So they are revealing themselves as the enemy. And that's what I was talking about earlier, how the damage that they're doing to the brand. Because people are realizing en masse how, oh, wait a minute, they're not misguided young people that just need to be guided towards, moderate thinking. Oh, no. These are like literally the enemy that wants me dead. This is what people are realizing, and how there is really not much talking you can do at that point. But I'm still on that tipping point of writing them off and considering them the enemy, or no, you actually now is the time to redouble the effort and try to bring them back to a reasonable position. And I feel like the Hollow Faithless, they have been fully failed by the system. You see, it used to be that something that I've repeated many times is that 1/3 of the population is retarded. It's a South Park quote that the older I get, the more I understand how deeply, sadly accurate it is. It explains basically 100% of the world's problems. 1/3 of the population is retarded. It starts explaining so many things once you start giving that as the answer to every problem. But it used to be that faith would catch these people who simply don't have that internal moral compass. The right still has faith catching these people, and it gives them an external purpose. It gives them a punishment for misdeeds and an incentive to do good things. I am non-theist, but the older I get, the more I really understand that the role of religion cannot be overstated in just keeping people in line. And I am not saying that this should be stated, that I'm not saying, oh, every person with faith is retarded. Obviously, I'm not saying that. I am saying that retarded people really need, or most retarded people need that in order to stay within the confines of civilized environments. And the reason why you see so many more unhinged, uncivilized, murderous, gleefully ghoulish people on the left today is because atheism and the cult of science has fully failed them. Because that surge of atheism that there was in the early 2010s and 2000s, they went into the schools and they told kids, they basically eliminated religion and replaced it with nothing. They told kids, especially teenagers, hey, there is absolutely nothing after you die. You cease to exist. Nothing you do really matters. Nothing matters. There is no purpose to anything. Deal with it. And how the hell do you think teenagers take that? There's now a massive problem of the Hollow Faithless in the West mostly, but you see a lot of the people that just lay down and rot in in the Asian countries. I don't know enough about the entire culture to give an educated telling of that entire thing, but you do see the sporadic post of those kind of people who give up and they basically let themselves rot in bed. But anyway, that's a tangent. So even though I have zero attachment to the concept of a higher power, and I like saying I am non-theist because it is really accurate. I literally live my life making decisions where at no point do I consider the existence of a higher power as a factor in any of my decisions. It just never comes as a thing that I consider to have in mind. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that you have that entire thing, and what used to be caught by Christianity in the case of the West, now there's nothing. There's a vacuum. And people simply just say, oh, I guess that's the way it is. There's so many people out there for whom some form of structured religious environment is necessary for them to just feel like their existence is worth living. It's worth going through. So they are going to fill up that void with something else. There's going to be something. And in the case of the political left, it was the cult of identity, the cult of science, which made science into a complete travesty. The irony there is impossible to ignore, how the entire trust the science cries and censorious tendencies to make sure that challenges to the science, the entire point, I've ranted about this before, I'm gonna mention it again, the entire point of the scientific pursuit is to question everything. You welcome the flat earthers because it gives you a chance to thoroughly bury them in humiliating defeat by your facts and logic. That's the whole spirit of the scientific pursuit, of constantly asking questions and getting answers for them and being satisfied by them. And if the answers are not satisfying, you ask harder until you get a satisfying answer, instead of just saying, trust the scientists, the experts are right. Banned. And I understand how that leads to, the conspiracy unhinged people who will plant doubts on accepted facts, but that is the price you have to pay. It's just the way it is. I would much rather have that than a complete end to not political, but scientific discourse. But anyway, and again with the freaking tangents. The vacuum of religion was filled with all these funky creeds that ended up doing pretty much the same thing, but worse. Because the cult of science, the cult of identity, it has none of the civilization building, or I guess not nearly as much as the civilization building values of Christianity in the West. The traditional set of beliefs that will emphasize community so hard, emphasize helping your neighbors so hard. The other thing that filled the vacuum is just pure hedonism of instant satisfaction and making sure you got yours and you screw your neighbor to get theirs. And that's where the Hollow Faithless lie. their lives are hollow, devoid of a deeper purpose than getting theirs. But that's like half of it, because there is a reason why they're so hopeless and hollow and, you know, overtaken by instant satisfaction and tiny petty victories. And that's because society has become a trap. Oftentimes, there is a really good argument saying, you have no idea how good you have it. Modernity has given you so much comfort. But in a way, that's a fallacy. Because true, you may be more comfortable than a king in the Netherlands in his cold castle, having to use his latrine and his royal butt wiper. Do the Netherlands have kings? Do they have thanes? I don't know, but also the king had a purpose. At least the good kings did. The peasant, they had a purpose. If nothing else, the concern for survival, they will be their purpose. Most of the time, they will be concerned with their family and all that stuff. Today's high society, the civilization that we have created, especially the city-trapped rats that just cannot escape their environment, they have become so hopeless. They have just abandoned the idea of ever owning a home. You know that saying, BlackRock, George Soros, whoever the hell narrative of you'll own nothing and be happy? Let's all be honest, the entire being happy part, that was never really much of a concern. The important part is you'll own nothing. And that is where young people find themselves. So can you even blame them when they really have no prospects? They even did the right thing. They went into school for a science degree. And by the time, like, let's say computer science, they were like, oh man, coding seems to be the rage. That's the way to the future, right? By the time they got out of their degree, turns out their job was replaced by a robot. Turns out that now the work of 10 people can be done by one that gets the prompt and corrects the prompt for proper code. And this is like a literal quote of a literal, what was it, software engineer? What were you, Kevin? I forget. He was in a position of basically manager of coders. And he was like, AI can do the work of 10 people. And I really need to watch out for it because my job is in jeopardy. Definitely the people under him, they were pretty obsolete by then. Sure, the code is not nearly, doesn't have the same quality, but that's why you have the person at the top making sure that it is functional and usable, you know? And what I'm getting at with all that is saying how even the people that kind of did it right, they didn't get a freaking gender studies degree. They actually did things the way they were supposed to. They still got majorly screwed by modern day developments. Some concentration is needed. Uh-oh. So there's a degree of deep sympathy for these kind of people. Like, is it their fault that they believe this way? Do they simply not need to perhaps be, you know, redouble the efforts? Don't write them off as the enemy. There's also the practical argument saying, well, you know, this is a civilized society. You can't just like round them up and hang them. You need some kind of plan. And the only two real alternatives in this kind of environment is either you marginalize them completely to the point that they have zero power, and that may result, I see them going one way or another, may result in either, them seeing the light saying, hey, this is actually really not working for me. I'm going to maybe bring my views back into something that is reasonable and remotely human, or they may be completely going off the deep end, and then you get yet another unhinged assassin in the waiting. And that's another worry that you have to now be concerned about. There's either that, marginalization, there is criminalization, you just lock them away. Not very fond of that, because ultimately, even though it is awfully ghoulish, they are just expressing opinions on the internet. Pretty sure that criminalizing expressing opinions on the internet is a bad path to follow. So, and those are the two only real options to deal with these people that you have declared as your enemy without turning into a literal fascistic environment where you are rounding up people who express opinions and murdering them or locking them away. So at a practical level, you're also kind of considering this and saying like, well, reform needs to be the objective, but then you run into the entire paradigm and obstacle of, oh, do you mean like re-education camps? It's like, that's what got me kind of in a stun lock of a loop of these, like, what's the practical solution for these obviously lost souls that you have to do something about? You can't just let the youth continue going down this path and become super unhinged and living alongside these players who would, again, literally celebrate if I got killed. These ideas that I'm expressing right now, I am making myself an enemy of these unhinged ghouls, these repulsive pieces of garbage, and I may become a target, right? So you gotta do something about them, but there has to be a path for redemption. And in fact, that is the way that I lean to, because the alternative is literal violence of some kind. And is that the path that you want your civilization to follow? And it's funny because, that is what would have been preached by typical Christian values. But something else that I have been thinking about, and my apologies if you came here to be entertained. Usually this is a primarily comedy show, but this is what's been in my mind. I just gotta get it out of my craw. I gotta get it out of my throat so I can get back to making fart jokes into the microphone. One of the reasons why there hasn't been videos in the channel, how it's just kind of been stuck. It's just been stuck in there, and I've been not quite agonizing, but just thinking about, should I even bring, because, there's the obligation, quote unquote, of coming in here and just being a source of entertainment, not being a bummer. But it is also a little bit of literal therapy. And it is indeed what I want to talk about. And damn it, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, even though it is definitely something that's going to harsh the mellow of many of you fellas. Even people who don't share these beliefs that I'm talking about may be bummed out because that's not what you come here for. So that is one reason why I will probably warn you ahead of time in the title or the description that, hey, this one is going to get political. And if you don't want any of that, well, you can skip this one. The traditional preaching of turn the other cheek, forgive. Oh, I almost rope him. that ain't the way in Spelunky HD, buddy. You don't rope these idiots. You bash their skull in with a pickaxe. That's how you do. Oh yeah, we have a great one going on right now. You know, to redouble your efforts. Like, this is the... you could even consider it a test of your Christian mettle. Even in the face of abject evil. You say, these are the people that need it the most. We have an obligation to still open our arms to them and try to bring them back to reason. They don't have to start agreeing with everything you say. They don't have to start believing in a higher power. They just have to not be happy when somebody gets murdered in front of their children, in front of thousands of adoring fans. The guy who is, again, fully on record advocating for dialogue. Even though you may disagree enormously, even though you consider his beliefs harmful, he was on record several times. That is what really sticks to me, by the way. That why I feel so strongly about this. If he had been a Hassan Piker who routinely wants the literal death of his political opponents, it would be a little bit more understandable. Well, you know, that would be a little bit more appropriate to say that he died by the sword that he wielded. But this one ain't that. This one ain't that. What I'm trying to get at is that there's also the flip side of that where, you know, well, at some point you have to stop being a prisoner of kindness. And that's another thing that I kind of arrived at, how Western civilization and the extremists, they kind of live at the mercy of the majority Christian Americans in America. How just imagine for a second, obviously it's not going to happen, but imagine for a second that it becomes the Christian norm, the Christian widespread message that, hey, we are done with these people. We are done with that kind of tolerance. And we're just gonna eliminate them from society. And every Christian agrees on this. It's like, we're done tolerating this. It's over. We're launching a crusade on these bitches. Do you think the extremists will have even remotely a chance to resist a tide of aggression like that? Especially currently, they would have the backing of the government to do something like that. So it is bizarre. It's like they don't realize, I wouldn't say the danger they're in, because realistically that's not going to happen. I don't see that as a possibility, but you know, everything's possible, I guess. What? I suppose everything's possible. Problem solved. But it drives home the fact that they take the kindness and the tolerance for granted. And that if suddenly the entire paradigm shifted, you'll be completely shit out of luck to resist that kind of drive. What is it? 1 in 2 Americans adhere to the Christian faith? What is the stat on that these days? 69% identify as Christian in the United States. They are the majority. I might be in danger if they go extreme enough, saying, you know what, we're going on a bitch-ass crusade, and every bitch-ass non-believer is suspect. You know? So, obviously, I will convert instantly, but what I'm trying to say is that, holy shit, man, you have mistaken kindness for weakness. You maybe poking a bear that you will dearly regret messing with. So if nothing else, if reason cannot bring you back to regular civilized society, maybe the fear of retribution will, because you are becoming intolerable. It's funny because, you know, this is something that I have been talking to with my wife, and she's the one that's like, I can't tolerate. They have gone too far. The visceral repulsion that one feels, a normal person will feel when watching these ghouls. They have fully underestimated, especially that one video with the girl saying he cannot possibly become a martyr because everybody hated him. Like the deep disconnection with reality saying that. And it kind of shows how fully disconnected from what reality around them actually is. It's just bizarre. But that, back to the point at the very start, that unmasking, that revelation of them actually loving the fact that you might die, being extremely happy that, because like some other people have been saying, like the only difference between Charlie Kirk and me is the size of the audience. Me as in the general me, not me personally, your Uncle Blargo, who has always been a cowardly fence sitter who doesn't barely talk about politics really, because I just really don't want to be bothered by constant vitriol. So I will just, you know, keep my opinions to myself. But this one has just stuck so hard. Yet another point in the graph of how deeply this entire event, and not just the event, you see, because usually with all the other assassinations, even the stabbing of that lady in the subway by some violent psychopath, I have always not dismissed it, but explained it as, well, it's one violent psychopath. You cannot blanket an entire group of people, be that whichever group you prefer, for the actions of one person. But their reactions, the celebrations, have revealed the group of people as the problem. And obviously they don't represent the majority, but there's enough to say, yeah, they want me dead. And the they being an accurate statement and not a vague allusion to a mystery evil group. So that revelation, it's really becoming a widespread realization that, oh wow, they really are the enemy and we have to do something about it, or we might get killed. I will be next. I will probably be next if I speak my mind, if I encounter one of these people in my regular life and they happen to find out and they have the opportunity to get away with it. And even the ones that don't, they may be taken over by a violent impulse, like the sudden stabbing of a person just sitting there doing literally nothing. That is another thing that was so viscerally worrisome, how literally doing nothing, not suspecting in the slightest, gets stabbed in the neck to death. Going on a tangent here on the another, but that also has, you know, it exacerbated. It's a conjunction. It's a prelude for what happened later. It definitely made it more notable. So this has been in my mind so much. And it's just still something that I'm struggling with, trying to figure out. Do I need to, like, what do you do at a personal level, right? Do you need to start watching over your shoulder? Do you need to really watch what you say around? You know, they do often sport a uniform, referred to nose ring theory. Everybody can tell they have a certain kind of look, a certain kind of uniform. Do you need to really watch what you say around these guys, or they might get some idea inside their mind that will result in some kind of violent happening? Or do you redouble your efforts to try and just bring them back? Bring them back from the brink of insanity. Still struggling with that. I invite opposing views in the comments. If you did celebrate and think, if you have something to say about how bad Charlie Kirk was, please go ahead, because it will give me a great excuse to never see your comments again. Because anytime that I see that, it's like, so what's the conclusion? Therefore, he deserved death. It's like, and the thing is, comments on the internet, I've been telling my wife not to take them that seriously, because at the very least, 70%, this is a made-up percent, but it's what it feels right. 70% are either bots or people who love to get a rise out of people who will be outraged. So they say the outrageous thing, you know, very typical of the internet. But these days, that I can understand. The awful doomer bit of it is the bots that are there just to sow discord and discontent. That they are very real. Just every comment section, you can't literally cannot tell, because it's not a bot farm that will post the same thing over and over and over. It's a trained AI personality that will actually come up with something that sounds 100% human with a 100% human looking profile, and you literally cannot tell it apart from one comment that is created by a human being. It's the dead internet quote-unquote theory is not a theory at all. The thing is, it is a misnomer. It's not, they called it wrong, the whole dead internet thing, because it kind of makes you think about, oh, everybody is a zombie or something. They should have called it the robotic internet, or the automated internet, because that's what it's talking about, how traffic is being driven by automatic non-human sources, as opposed to people doing their people thing, to the point that you just cannot pay any attention to comments in any platform. It is just full of bullshit. Full of bullshit, agitators, propaganda spreaders. What's it called? Dissent sowers from another country, people with agendas, all that kind of stuff. Even particular people. Oh, I already had a jetpack. Oops. Even, particular people who just want to spread some kind of nonsense message, and they will program a machine to do it. So overall, I really need to devalue the impact of comments on the internet. Only talking heads that are not obvious AI can get the treatment of, oh, this person is a human being with absolutely unhinged beliefs. My man, you need to leave this place. You need to leave this place. See if we can get this blown up so he goes away. There you go. Well done, idiot. So that's pretty much the entirety of the things that I wanted to talk about. It's just kind of heartbreaking. And it feels like we're entering different era. It might not be. Everything might continue going the way that is going. People will continue polarizing, and they will get to a different tipping point that will be the real inciting problem. Or it is possible that, you know, things may cool off and go back to normal. The thing with the entire Civil War narrative in the United States is like, these are really, really tiny percent of the population. That is the one saving grace about the entire narrative. How, you know, they're extremely loud online, but all these people posting videos and celebrating, even if they're 1,000 people, that's in a country population of 300 plus million. It's like, is it really that much of a problem? The problem becomes when they also become unhinged assassins, because it only takes one, maybe two, acting in concert. That is still to be determined. It's another thing that has been kind of bothering me a little bit. Not quite bothering me, but just kind of making me shake my head. How there's a lot of conspiracy theories and just questions being raised by all kinds of things. And questions are good, but there's a very obvious and simple explanation for what happened. And, you know, people are kind of hurting, they're grieving, they're trying to, some of them are trying to grift, of course, on, you know, because sure gets a lot of clicks to talk about this particular issue. So you're going to hyperanalyze the body language of the texts of the tranny boyfriend, and you're going to find that it was all created as a patsy with the CIA, and you're going to spread this theory. And it's like, I'm not saying that's not true. I'm saying, like, what? Why do you need to seek this extremely convoluted explanation? And what kind of logistics will that take? Like, imagine, it's like, was the father a plant that was paid to act out as him turning him in and all that kind of stuff? It's like, there's a lot of moving parts to this conspiracy when you can easily explain it with, it was one unhinged piece of shit with a rifle. I'm leaving this plasma cannon. I'm sick of it. But anyway, I'm not saying 100% the official story is the story. I'm saying that, you know, maybe cool it a little bit. And by now it's getting a little silly, the level of Charlie Kirk thumbnails that you encounter. Is like, this is starting to feel kind of milky. You are farming this shit for clicks. It's just something that you're holding on to, so more eyeballs fall into your camp. You know, that's the same thing with everything. I mean, it does happen very rarely. It's pretty unheard of, honestly, that people would use a crisis to push their own agenda. That hardly ever happens, right? But it may be happening right now. Oh man, I need to get ready. I need to get ready for, well, I need to get ready for an appointment coming up. I gotta go, and that is unfortunate, but it's okay, because I was going to hell. I don't need to go to hell. I'm just going to speedrun the crap out of this temple. Don't you worry about a thing. We're going to get to Olmec, get to the end of Olmec, or maybe get killed by a mummy. Whoop. There you go. It's all good. It's all good. We're speed. Why do you exist? Just trying to speedrun this baby. Gotta get going for yet another appointment. Things has been, you know, been dealing with a lot of medical stuff lately. Just being. Oh! Well, that does it. I didn't really say everything I wanted to say, but there'll be more videos. I'm going to get back to the grind.